tonight is our special guest, Michael Graf. He is a Wisconsin screenwriter, and we want to get to know him more because he is having some amazing success in 2020. We were speaking earlier about, how this has been kind of a upside down year, but in some aspects, it's been a year of wonderful opportunities for screenwriters because of this virtual aspect of tapping into the industry, getting to know more people that are in the industry, and having these relationships while we're still at home and not having to board a plane and get to LA and all that kind of stuff. And it's been giving a more humanistic aspect to writing as we're getting to know each other as people living through a pandemic and still producing and still creating content. So Michael told me before we came on to the program that he actually cranked out 2 feature scripts this year because he was able to focus and be home. So welcome, Michael Graf. So Michael has had a lot of success with feature scripts lately. He has been writing content about true stories, historical stories. And there's one in particular, the last, can you get the title for me, Michael?
The Last Indian War.
The Last Indian War. So he has had two scripts that have been optioned, correct? And one's been produced. So,
right.
And he's won several contests. And take it away, Michael. So the first thing I want to say to you is, tell everybody your backstory. What do you do as a day job, and how did you get into screenwriting?
Sure. My day job, I've been working as a commercial director in advertising. I've been producing and directing TV campaigns for over 25 years. I'm a member of the Directors Guild. I've been a member of the DGA for almost 15 years now, 15 years. And so I've been in production. My degree is in television and film production. I've been obsessed with filmmaking since I was a little kid. And it's interesting. When I was in college, my focus has been on directing. And when I graduated, I went out to LA, and I was working in LA for a couple of years, and I was working in post-production, and I was working for special effects in Post House. And I didn't start directing until I moved from LA to Madison, which I think is an unusual career move. I wouldn't recommend it. And it wasn't until I was here for a number of years, I kind of fell into writing. It's always been an interest, but I was like definitely of the camp where it's like, oh yeah, someday I'll write, and then I never did. And then a number of years ago, I was working out at a gym downtown, and it was one of those scenarios where a guy came up to me and he's like, you do that TV thing, right? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, I have a book that would make a great movie. And I was like, okay. And he gave me the book, and he was right. It was a great book, and the author was happened to be from here in Madison. And ABC had the rights had optioned the book, but didn't do anything with it. And the option had lapsed back to the author. And I met with him for coffee downtown one day, and I told him how I thought the story could be made into a movie, and he gave me the rights to it, and I co-wrote it with a friend of mine who was also in advertising, and it was kind of a home run right out of the park. We entered it into one competition in New York, and we won top honors there. And it was called Winter of Frozen Dreams, and it was a story about the Barbara Hoffman murder. Back in the late 70s, Barbara Hoffman was a student here in Madison at the UW, and her senior year, she dropped out of college to work at a massage parlor. And while she was there, she would take out insurance policies on her clients and then blackmail them and kill them. And it was the first televised courtroom case in U.S. history, and it launched the political career of Jim Doyle, who went on to become governor of Wisconsin. So anyway, so, you know, Mark Twain always said, you know, the worst luck a young man can have is having really great luck the first day at the track. So it was like the first screenplay, it got produced. And I was like, oh, I guess I can write. And then I didn't do anything for a couple of years. And then I started working on a second screenplay, and that was The Last Indian War. So I started working on that over 10 years ago, and it's been optioned once. Two producers wanted to option it, and it didn't work out, and then it's just been re-optioned again. So it's and that screenplay has opened a lot of doors for me, and it's just been within the last 2 years or so that I was like, I want to do this more. I really have gotten a lot of creative satisfaction out of writing, and I really enjoy it a lot. And so I've been concentrating more and more on writing. And I think in the last 3 years, I've got 3 screenplays done in 3 years, 2 of which happened within the last 8-9 months. So
would you say that your favorite genre is true stories? Is that what you like best?
No, I don't know what my, you know, it's so The Last Indian War is also it's a historical true story. It's about a group of Native American kids, Indian kids that were kidnapped by the military after the Civil War and sent to a military school, the Carlisle Indian School back east. And while they were there, they basically invented the modern game of football. And the story is kind of a coming of age story about these children that were ripped from their homes and their families, and how they created the modern game of football. And then they vied for the national championship in 1911, and they played against the very team that was responsible for their kidnapping in the first place, the Army Cadets of West Point. And that's a true story. It's never been done. It's an amazing story, and I'm passionate about it. So that's historical true. The screenplay one of the screenplays I just finished is kind of a historical crime, and it's a kind of a historical noir. And it's called Venice of America, and it's loosely based on actual events about a famous radio personality of the 1920s who is murdered in Venice Beach, California. And the detective hired to investigate her murder, kind of runs into a roadblock when she shows up alive the day after her funeral. So that was a blast to work on, and I love the research in that. But I've written a coming of age comedy, and the screenplay I just finished is an action thriller, and that's called PICKET CHARLIE, and it's part of it comes out of the program at the university. I'm the writer in residence at the Institute for Discovery, and it's part of their program's Science to Script that promotes science and technology in pop arts and the arts. So that's been a lot of fun too. And I think I don't know if I have a favorite genre yet. I've been kind of exploring and kind of trying to find what I gravitate towards. It's definitely kind of historical crime drama, but comedy, I tried my hand at that, and it's a totally different beast. So it's I don't know yet. I'm still trying to figure that out.
So let's talk about how The Last Indian War got noticed got you, got your name out there. Which contests did you select, and which ones did you do well?
So I've tried to be really strategic. Being here in Madison, it's definitely harder to network because we're not near a big film market. I mean, even Chicago is. I mean, we're close to Chicago, but it's not LA or New York. So what I've started doing with my screenplays is I send them out. I enter lots of film festivals and screenwriting festivals, with the goal of trying to network, of trying to do well, win awards, and use that opportunity to network with people, with producers, with agents, with whoever. And the screenplay won top honors. One of the first awards it won was top honors in Paris at a film festival in Paris. And at first my strategy was enter festival. I didn't know. I'm kind of like trying to discover this. I'm trying to build the airplane as I'm flying it. And I was like, oh, I'm going to enter screenwriting competitions in places that I'd like to go to, ideally. So I entered Paris, and I entered the Bahamas International Film Festival, and Park City, like places that I wanted to go to, and that seemed to have reputable festivals. And the screenplay did really well at all of those places. It won top honors in Paris, and then I won top honors at the Bahamas. They have a writer's residency program as part of their festival, and that was kind of a big watershed festival for me, because they invite the top 5 screenwriters to a week in the Bahamas with producers and agents, and you're literally stuck on an island, and the only thing to do is to talk about your stories, and drink and eat with these people. So that was like an ideal situation. And that's actually where I met my manager, Jib, and he's a producer and a manager. And I've been working with him since then. But that festival was amazing. And then the Last Indian War won the Culture and Heritage Award at Table Read, my screenplay in Park City. And then it also was picked, the ISA picked that script and put me on their development slate. And I've been on their development slate. I was one of their first writers on their development slate. And they've been helping nurture that, through the development program. They've been trying to get me to kind of follow good practices. Like I keep a journal of, like, I try to write every week, and they have these monthly reports, and I send them in, and it's a good way to kind of check and balance, to make sure that that you are writing. And it's really good discipline to become disciplined to do that. And also, when you get depressed because it's like, oh, we're in a pandemic and things are going horrible, it's like you can look back and say, oh, look at all the things I actually, you kind of documented what you've been working on. And it's like, it's reassuring to look back and look at all the things that you've done. So that's been good. And the script was optioned by a former executive at Disney who started his own company this year, and he has optioned it. And the really interesting thing, there were 3 producers that were looking to option it this year, and that was a really interesting position to be in. And this producer, the very first meeting with him, I was a little gun shy to tell him that that I've been working on this for 10 years and that it hasn't really gone anywhere. And he made an interesting comment. He said, the market has caught up to this picture, to this story, and the timing now is right for this. And that was really, for me, that was really encouraging to hear, that the story, I knew that the story was a really good story, but for whatever reason, that it didn't take any traction up until now. It wasn't necessarily me or my writing. It was the fact that the planets hadn't aligned. So, I thought that was really interesting. And the notes he gave were really good too.
Awesome. So you kind of answered my next question. What was, how did you, land your representation? So you talked about the Bahamas Film Festival, and that's where you met your manager, and you guys kind of clicked right away. So there are opportunities like that you can, have these special retreats where you can meet industry people, managers, and agents, and have those talks about your story, and they might pick you up from that. But have you had Zoom meetings this year with these producers about Last Indian War, and what was that like? Were they just one-on-ones, or was it a whole panel of people that you were talking story to? How did that go?
Well, actually, interesting enough, I haven't had one Zoom meeting about Last Indian War. It's all been phone calls. It was I've been on plenty of Zoom meetings pitching my other scripts, but weirdly enough, for Last Indian War, it's just been phone calls. But the process was with all three producers. We spent a lot of time kind of talking about the story and what they liked about it, what they wanted to see changed. The kind of the common thread for the last couple of years is, the very first draft of the script was 140 pages long. And the common thread for the last couple of years is, Mike, you have to shorten it. You've got to edit this out. And the conversations were always, it was like, we love what you wrote. You need to cut it shorter, but don't cut anything or add this. And I'm like, how do I do? So I really spent, I re-edited and rewrote the script twice in the past year. And the first time I got early at the beginning of the year, when I was talking to a different producer, I got it down to like 130 pages, 132 pages, and now it's down to 121. But the notes from this producer that has optioned it, his notes were actually really good. They were very helpful. And I ended up not really cutting any scenes, just tightening some scenes up, tightening some dialogue up. And I got it down to 120 pages. And I'm really proud of the fact that I did the things that he wanted, that he thought would make it better. And I was able to really, I think I shortened a number of scenes, and that actually really made everything flow a lot better. So I'm really happy with where it's at right now. And I didn't think I was going to be able to get it down to 120, to that page count without losing something major. But it was been really, so it's been kind of a work in progress, a steady work in progress for a long time now. It's been very, very kind of organically evolving over the last couple of years.
So what's your role in the process now? I mean, this producer has the revised script, it's been optioned. Do you just kind of wait to get word about what you need to do next? Or is there any kind of follow-up that your manager needs to do? Or what happens now?
Now it's just, I have just made the producer, I've let him know that I'm available to help in any way that I can. As he goes and raises money and puts a deal together, I wanted to let him know that I was there to help as much or as little as he wants me to be, which he appreciated. But yeah, right now it's like, now for the time being, it's out of my hands.
So is there another project in the wings that's getting looked at the same time?
Yeah, so that Venice Beach crime story, Venice of America, we've been shopping that around, and I've been working with it started off as a feature script, and I wrote the feature script this spring. And an old friend of mine, he works in Los Angeles, and he's a two-time Oscar-nominated visual effects supervisor. And this was kind of a passion project of his. He's not a writer, but he told me what he wanted to do, and it was like I want to do a story about the very early days of Venice Beach, and then I kind of took it and ran with it, and I wrote a feature screenplay, and we started pitching it to people that he's done all kind of high end. He was nominated for an Oscar for Captain America Winter Soldier, and he kind of works in that kind of upper echelon big budget realm of filmmakers. So he had some friends and colleagues at El Paso, Clint Eastwood's company, and at Bad Robot, and some of the bigger A-list production companies in LA, and we've been getting the script, giving it to them to read, and the comments back were like, "This is an amazing story. Have you thought about turning it into a series?" And so it's like, oh, and I hadn't, but I didn't want to lose the script because I like it a lot. So we kind of used the script as a cornerstone, and we've this summer we developed it into an anthology series of noir true crime, like 1920s true crime that all takes place in Venice Beach. And a lot of it involves like Charlie Chaplin, and it involves Fatty Arbuckle, and a lot of kind of old Hollywood classic, classic characters. And we just started pitching that to places. So we've been active. So it was kind of like taking the script and working it into a show series. And so we're working on that, and we're sending that out and about. And then PICKET CHARLIE, the script that I just finished, that's the action event, that came out of the UW Science to Script. I literally just finished that a couple weeks ago, a rewrite on that. And I pitched it at a couple of virtual pitch fests, and John Woo's producer really was interested, and she's reading it right now. So keeping fingers crossed. But I just started the process of kind of shopping that around and pitching that. So we'll wait and see.
That's something else I wanted you to like elaborate on, that just because that you have representation doesn't mean that your work is done as far as getting your scripts out there, that you can still pitch it on your own, you can still network and make connections. So can you elaborate on that, just because you have representation doesn't mean everything falls on the manager's lap. You still do work.
No, not at all. My manager has been really good at, like when he was the one that has been like the last couple of years has been Mike, shorten Last Indian War. Short. I mean, he was like, you got to rewrite it. You got to shorten it. And when I was kind of like, when I had finished Venice of America, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to write next. And I've got ideas for like 4 different projects that I was thinking about. And he was really good. I pitched all 4 to him, and he really liked PICKET CHARLIE. He thought that was really marketable for the time and place right now. So I started kind of developing that, and then I had volunteered last year to help the folks at the Institute of Discovery with some of their programming. And through my relationships with folks at the university, I had mentioned PICKET CHARLIE to them, and they're like, "Whoa, that would be a really, really good script for our Science to Script program that we're just starting to launch." And that kind of that kind of took off, and they kind of brought me in as their writer in residence, and then gave me access to all of their top. It's a kind of it's an action movie about trees, and it's about climate change, and it takes place in this dystopian near future world, and they gave me access to a lot of the climate scientists, folks that have been down to Antarctica, part of the Ice Cube Project, and I spent the better part of the summer just interviewing a lot of these people via Zoom because we couldn't do it in person. And so it's like the story it takes place 80 years from now, and it's like, I guess it's technically science fiction, but it's really fiction based on like hard scientific evidence about climate change, talking with meteorologists and things like that. So that has been really fun to work on too, just because getting access to all these people to be able to kind of talk in a language, to take that and kind of mold the science into a story that is really accessible, has been kind of a really, really fun thing to do. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, you did. So, as a writer, once you have your script done and it's gotten the attention of someone and you do land representation, your work doesn't end there. If you obviously got to keep creating new content, and then, pitching ideas to your manager and finding out what is marketable, and then writing it. But then in the process, still contacting people in your Rolodex or on your email list of like, hey, I have this new script. I met you at the such and such festival. Would you like to take a look at it? And just keep spreading the word out there about your material. And the more vibe you can get, the better.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I try to use, because I'm, we're not in LA, I try to use the resources that I do have available. And that is, using the ISA. I've got my scripts posted there, taking advantage of, the resources that they have to offer, and other services like Coverfly and Inktip and Blacklist, and just trying to get the work out and get it exposed. And then I enter all of them into screenwriting festivals, just for the hope of if they do well and I can network, if I can meet a couple of people that way. But it really is trying to network and get and meet people. And if you think about it, it's like your screenplay is a blueprint for something that's going to cost millions of dollars of investment and time, and no one is going to do that, give you that kind of time or energy or money blindly. So it is about networking, and I look at it as like that's part of the job, is to try to get out there and network with people and meet people, to help build that level of trust. So
I think there was another movie that you were talking about. I don't know, I think this was probably over a year ago now. It was a hockey movie, right? Or curling.
Curling.
Yeah.
That's Throwing Hammers. Yeah, that's the kind of the coming of age comedy script, which is like a totally different beast. It's more character driven than it is. I think all the other stories are more they're character centric, but they're driven by the story. And this is kind of a little bit more character study, and it's been harder to pitch. I haven't figured out how to pitch character driven material yet. But we were supposed to go into production this past winter and spring, and COVID ruined that. We were going to shoot in originally in January, and it got pushed back to March. The producers had an investor that had pulled out, so they pushed the production back 2 months into March, and then COVID hit, and like we were cast, we were ready to go, and when the COVID hit, everything shut down. And there was no insurance. We couldn't get bonding. There was because there was no COVID insurance. And then we lost that investor. And so that project has gone nowhere. So that was really kind of heartbreaking. But if there was a silver lining, it was that we hadn't started production yet. I think the worst thing on a small indie film, the budget for that was $2.5 million. Is if we had gotten halfway through and then had to shut down, I don't know if we would have been able to finish it. But so that is kind of still out there, but it isn't. We didn't go into production on it.
So if you were able to do another indie project, would you want to be more involved behind the camera as well as being a writer? Do you have any desire to do that?
I do. It depends on the project. Because I've spent most of my adult life directing. It depends on the subject matter. I don't know if I'm actually have the best directing skill set for PICKET CHARLIE. I don't think I'm an action director, but something like Throwing Hammers or Venice of America, I think that falls in my wheelhouse. So yeah, so I definitely want to be involved on some projects I'm developing. If I don't direct, I'm fine with it. And others, I'm like, I really want to. Last Indian War, I wrote it to direct, and that was kind of a pipe dream. I wrote too big a budget, too epic a script for anybody to give. Even though I've been a commercial director, I haven't done any feature work yet. And the rule of thumb is you don't give a first-time feature director a budget, $9-10 million. So and this definitely is a bigger project. So I had to come to terms personally with not letting that part go. And it's important to have the story told right. And it's weird, I have this kind of thing because the characters were all real people. I want to honor them and make sure that it gets done right. So so and that's part of as I've been talking to producers, some producers I've walked away from because I just didn't get a good vibe for it. They wanted to change the story. They wanted to make it, they wanted to whitewash it in some ways. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to make sure that I honored these Native American kids that at the Carlisle school. So yeah, so I guess it's every project is a little bit, I look at it a little bit differently if I'm just going to wear the writer's hat or try to promote it as a writer-director vehicle.
So I don't know if everybody heard at the beginning that I think you said the last Indian War was something that you wrote 10 years ago.
11 years ago, I think. Yeah, 11 years ago.
So
well, I started working on it 11 years ago. Yeah. I just finished the rewrite 2 weeks ago.
So that's one of those things that people have to understand about screenwriting is that it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. That you're in it for the journey. And you said that this was a passion project, that you wrote this story not only because it happened in real life, but your heart was in it. And it sounds very much the way you speak of your story, that your heart was with these young Native American boys. And to see them come of age and, do something miraculous and then be acknowledged for it and that sort of thing, that to have other writers not give up hope. That if there's this story that means so much to you, and when you do pitch it, you are going to get acknowledgement because you're pitching it with passion. Yeah. And that gets the people on the other side of the Zoom or the other side of the table excited because they can read your passion and they want to know more. So don't give up hope if you've got a project that means something to you and it's been 10 years, 12 years, 22 years. What was it, 25 years for the King's Speech to get made? right?
Yeah.
So, you know,
And just a footnote about Last Indian War. It's and this might sound really corny, but the first script that I did, the Winter of Frozen Dreams, that project was a shit show. The producers were horrible. They lied. It was a terrible experience that I wouldn't. That they broke contracts. They rewrote the script. It was the most horrendously painful process. And it was so painful that I couldn't even go to I couldn't even sit in the movie theater for a year. And when first read this story about the Carlisle Indian School and these Indians, I had kind of this epiphany, and I was like, man, here are a group of kids that had everything ripped away from them, stolen. They were kidnapped from their families, their culture, everything had ripped away from them. And they go on and reinvent themselves. They invent the modern game of football. They create the craze for football. They win a national championship. And I was like, and it was weird because it was like the story got me excited about the movies again, and about writing, and about wanting to do what I had originally wanted to do. And it's a feel-good movie. And I wrote it for myself to kind of get back in a good place. And it's weird. It's like, I have this like weird, for them helping me with that, I owe it to them to make sure that it gets told as best as it can. And it sounds really corny out loud, but in my brain, it makes sense.
I think it makes sense. So that kind of leads me to my last question. So what advice would you give to screenwriters, whether they're starting at their very first project or they're on their 10th project, if they're hitting a slump, and this year's been full of slumps and other things that were unexpected, how do you get out of that funk? How do you pump yourself back up and get motivated and get back to that writing?
I mean, everyone's going to have a little bit slightly different experience, but I think the important thing is that writing is like, it's like exercising. It's like going to the gym. It's like working out. I mean, you have to get into the habit of doing it every day. And even if it's just a page, just set goals. I'm only going to write a page a day, or I'm going to do. It's like I try to set aside, at least a couple hours a day to try and get some writing done. It's been harder the last month or two as I'm trying to pitch things too. It's like finding that balance, but it's like I've been rewriting, I've been working on things. The thing that I didn't realize when I started was, you hear people talk about, oh, it's a marathon. And you hear, you talked about the King's Speech, how that took 25 years to make. You hear at the Academy Awards, the guy that wins, the person that wins the award for best writer, the man or the woman will say, oh, I've been working on this for 25, 30 years. That's not the exception. That's the rule. And it's a long process. And every film takes a long time to develop. And it takes patience. And, like when you option the project, the options are, 12-month, 18-month, 24-month options. So you right there, it's like you've got a year that maybe something happens, maybe something doesn't happen. And so it's just, you have to, if you think that it's going to be really quick, it's not. And it's hard. And I think the thing to keep yourself motivated is start to work on the next project. Always have a second project in your back pocket that you're working on. And the bigger the library of material that you can develop, when you do get a chance to talk to agents or managers or producers, they inevitably ask you, after you pitch them the first story, what else do you have? And it definitely helps your cause if you're a writer that you have written multiple things. And it also, the managers and the agents, if they're there to help build your team to help build your brand as a writer. And the more material that you have, they can help, it helps them pitch you and sell you as a writer. Like the things that you're good at. If you write more character driven material, or if it's more story driven material, they can help, the more material that you have, the easier it is for them to do that. So write every day. I think that's the thing, is to keep writing. It's kind of like the coming of age comedy that I did about curling. It's all about friendship. And I wanted to tell a story that didn't involve violence. It was like a male bonding story. In this age of Me Too, I didn't want the idea of male friendship to get lost, and a healthy, constructive male friendship. And curling's a really unique sport because it's a team sport of only 4 people. And so there's an intimacy to that. And you really develop friendships when you curl. And the metaphor of curling I really like, because it's the only sport where you can change the trajectory of the object thrown without ever touching it. And I thought that was kind of a good metaphor for our friends and family changing the trajectory of our lives. Sometimes we don't even realize that it's touching us. And that's a great story. But I purposely wanted to tell a story that didn't have any guns or anything in it. A buddy picture that didn't involve guns or violence, and that seemed like a good vehicle to do that, to tell that. And then PICKET CHARLIE, it's an environmental action picture, and it's got guns, it's got hand-to-hand combat, it's got everything. It's got everything.
I think your pitch for your curling movie should be all about that trajectory that you were talking about. I think that will really get people's attention.
Yeah.
Using that line that curling is the one sport where you change the direction of something without touching it.
Yeah, I've tried it's been the hardest story for me to pitch when I've been doing it, like some virtual pitch fests where you only have like 5-10 minutes, because so much of the story is character driven. It's the relationships between the protagonist and his 3 best friends, and also there's a love interest in the story, and to try to get that across has been more of a challenge for me than when you're kind of describing plot points and beat and tempo and some of these other things. And that's a really good way. I use that, but I usually bury the lead in the end of the pitch. But I should start the pitch with that.
Open with that, yeah.
Yeah.
The sports movie that sticks with me is Miracle on Ice, and that's all about hockey, right?
Yeah.
That's the root of the story. So the root of your story is curling, and it's 4 guys that try to change the direction of not only their sport but of their relationship.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
see,
cool.
That's a much better pitch. That's a much better pitch than I've been pitching.
I'm always fascinated. I'm a guy that can get so bogged down in pre-writing, and I love pre-writing, all of the organizing it all. I guess it comes out that I'm an assistant director by trade as well, that you produce the movie before you go to set. So I'm just kind of curious, especially because with our Pro Tips and Tricks page, we try to encourage writers and inspire writers, but also pass along some lessons. And so I'm curious, Michael, through your experience, have you picked up any tricks, any tips, or just what is your pre-writing process? Do you dive really deeply into character development? I noticed that your movies take place in unique worlds, which I always find to be a really important part of something that you can just dive into as a reader as well. Or do you really get into the structure of the screenplay? Just anything that comes out based on this.
That's a really good question. And the first couple of scripts, I probably have not, I'm probably the worst person to use as an example, because I would not write in any organized manner. I'll I'll start to get excited about a project when I get a really good, crystal clear opening scene and closing scene. When the beginning and the end, and I forget if it was at Samuel Goldwyn, one of the old Hollywood, I think it was Samuel Goldwyn, or maybe it was Alfred Hitchcock. It was like you grab them in the first 5 minutes and the last 5 minutes. So you grab them when they come in and give them something to remember on the way out. And I always kind of like get those two moments, and when I get that, then I kind of work towards the middle on the first couple of scripts. And I started hearing people talk about what kind of, and I would do a lot of research too. A lot of it I really like diving into like historical aspects, or like if it's science, I like just like doing research on the subject matter and that kind of thing, and things kind of evolve from there. But like in Throwing Hammers, I wrote kind of in a non-linear way. It was based on a lot of, I took up curling a couple of years ago, so a lot of the stories are based on stories that I have heard from other curlers that were funny, that they wouldn't want their names attached, but were really funny things that happened. And so that had kind of a different approach. But with Venice of America, I actually did sit down. I started, because I didn't know anything about the history of it. And my friend, he all he said was like, you used to live in LA. How much do you know about Venice? And I was like, Muscle Beach. That's about all I know. And he started telling me about the canals that were built in Abbot Kinney, and how the city was this amazing city when it was first built. And all the film, like Charlie Chaplin shot the opening scene of Circus there, and Hal Roach and all the Our Gang shorts were filmed in Venice. And the more I started hearing about it, I started researching about it, and we didn't really have a story other than he's like, I want to do something about the early days of Venice. And then we kind of stumbled upon this radio personality that had gone missing and was presumed dead. And it kind of clicked. I was like, well, that's how I can wrap the story around. And then I actually did chart it out, and I was like, okay, so what happens if I knew I wanted to do like a noir, like a classic homage to film noir, because one of my favorite films is Touch of Evil by Orson Welles, and that was filmed in Venice Beach. And so I was like, I started mapping it out, like, and asking questions, and I had this big down facts and try and kind of pre-plot the whole story that way. And that actually was really helpful for me. And once I did that, it was just kind of adding the flesh to the bones of the skeleton. And that made the writing go a lot quicker than I had been doing in the previous screenplays. And then with Pickett Charlie, it was a totally different, that had started off as a short script. I wrote a short script, a 10-page short script that was the basis of that. And then I kept, like, the opening scene, again, the opening page and the last page. Actually, the last page is very different too. But I kind of had an inkling with that. And then once I started learning about the science of climate change, actually I made some major changes to the story I was going to tell. But the Venice of America, scripting that out, or kind of plotting that out, was really, really helpful.
Tune in next month, folks. Check your email. I'm going to keep the ISA Madison page up to date. If I don't have a guest speaker, we can just chat like this, bring the wine, check in with one another. How's it going? What do you need help with? We can spitball some pitches if you want.
Yeah.
If that will help with some process development there, let me know. But happy holidays to you all. Stay well and stay safe and stay healthy, and I'll see you in the new year.